Hey everyone, and welcome to my May wrap-up. It's been a good reading month. As you can see in the title, I set myself a goal to read 16 books in 1 month, and I managed it. I haven't read that much since middle school, and part of it is from Bookemon, so thank you Bookemon, although I also deviated from my Bookemon TBR a lot. So let's jump right into it. First up, I read The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. This was for my Classics badge exemplary. This is about a young man living in the late 19th century New York, essentially going to marry the girl that is proper, the girl that he should marry, but falling in love with a woman who is very much more, and the war between should he do what he's always been told to do, what is right, or should he be scandalous and go run off with what is not necessarily entirely right. It was originally written in the 1920s, and it jumps ahead at the end. I wasn't head over heels in love with it, but after I gave it some time to digest, it is definitely a book that is very discussable. It would be good for like a book club, or if you've ever read it for an English class, I could see that being one. However, in general, I didn't have too much love for the characters, but the ending I actually did like. I couldn't decide whether or not I liked it or not. It's a little bit open-ended, but I did enjoy that one. However, more than anything, I'm just happy I got another classic read. Next up, I read Blood Drops by W.B. Welsh. This was for the horror badge called Panic, and this has been popping around on my Twitter feed a lot. I've seen a lot of people talking about it. It was also one of the indie books I hauled at the beginning of the year, so I've been looking to get around to it a while. It is a series of horror short stories, and it is beautifully told. I love how some of them are really short and just have really weird, creepy things happening, and done. Move on to the next one. I think that horror especially lends itself very well to the short story format. I don't actually usually like short stories that much, but when the idea is to just be creepy and move on, it works. I do believe W.B. Welch is coming out with a full novel soon, or soon-ish, or she's working on, or something, but I will be looking into that, because this was definitely a good time. A scary good time. I'm sorry I said that. Next up is, I don't have it with me, but Shame is an Ocean I Swim Across. I have the physical copy somewhere, don't know where I put it. This is a poetry book by the songwriter Mary Lambert. It has, well, first of all, I kind of just picked it up for the cover. A lot of the reason I picked it up was the cover, not gonna lie, but it was very deep and very raw and very open, and I very much appreciated it. It actually made me want to look into her music more. It is, the topics it discusses are very, triggering. It is rape and incest and that kind of stuff, but it was very open, and I liked it a lot. So if you like poetry, and I don't know how many people on BookTube do, definitely check that one out. Next up, I read The Green Knight by Kris. This was not originally my sci-fi pick for my TBR, but I started reading my sci-fi pick, and then like 5 pages in, I realized I wasn't gelling with it, so I switched. This was billed as King Arthur meets Star Wars, which is what kind of drew me in. It was about this young woman who is called back to the kingdom she ran away from, essentially because the entire kingdom's in danger, and she has to take her throne back to restore it, but she doesn't really want to, and there's some reason for her to run away. Unfortunately, it kind of lost it at the last minute for me. I really liked it until the ending. Not that the ending was bad, it just felt like a very big ending that should have happened later. It is the first in a series, and the first part of the book felt like the first in a series, but the ending felt like the ending of a book that should have been like way later on. Like it should have been like book 3 or 4's ending, not the first one. And so there's kind of this, well, crap, if that's how you're ending, where are you going from here? It's not one of my primary series I'm working on, but it is on the back burner to continue it. It is indie, like Blood Drops was, if I didn't mention that. So definitely one I want to look forward to, because I am interested in more indie sci-fi. Always more indie sci-fi. Next up was my Rainbow Badge pick, accepted by Pat Patterson. This was the LGBTQ plus representation. For those of you who don't know a lot about wrestling, Pat Patterson was the first major wrestler to be not fully out of the closet to the public, but out of the closet to the people of the industry, like promoters and other wrestlers knew he was gay at a time when it was really not okay. I think I just looked up the other day, he debuted in like late 1950s. So like that was not okay. And so he talks about how he had pretty much the same lover, same companion for most of his life called Louie. And so heartbreaking how he talked about because of the need for secrecy and later on because of habit, never once in his head or out loud did he refer to Louie as his boyfriend, despite the fact that they were together for 40 years. And it was, heartbreaking. I will say that this is not a book you can read if you don't know wrestling that well, because he just name drops a bunch of classic 1950s wrestlers and talks about them and just kind of basically assumes that everyone reading the book has a certain level of knowledge, and you could read it, but you wouldn't get as much out of it without that. You kind of need to know the context where you jumped in. But it was very train of thought-esque. It definitely felt like you were just having a conversation with him, which I loved. And it was a great viewpoint that you don't get a lot of places. So I definitely would suggest this if you are a wrestling fan and have a little bit of knowledge. Check that out. Next up, let me look at my magical reading notebook here. Ooh. Next up, I read Boundary Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. This was the team pick. Every team in Bookemon had their battle book, the book you needed to read to, I'm not quite sure, something about battling or defending, but this was Team Instinct's pick, probably because there was orange on the cover. I don't know. I loved this. This was a world based on what are called scrivings or scrivings, I'm still not sure how to pronounce them, that basically can make things come alive more or less. That can like give things thoughts. It's really hard to explain, but a young thief steals what she thinks is just any other job, steals this piece of, well, she's not sure what it is, sees this little box, finds out that she has stolen an incredibly powerful artifact that a lot of really powerful people are after. And so she's gets thrown into this, and I loved this so much. 5 stars. The reveals of who she was and what the artifact was and what it meant and moving forward, like I'm so excited. Also, LGBT rep, the main character is at least queer, if not lesbian. She did not, I don't think she ever displayed any affection towards male characters. I can't remember. But there is queer representation in here as well. And I love that. I love when it just like pops up in a book, like you went in not knowing and then, oh, hey, queer. I love it. So definitely check that one out. We'll definitely be continuing the series. And I'm so thankful that Megan picked that book for Team Instinct. Next up, I gotta go back to my page. I need a better system, don't I? Next up was one of the books I needed to review. Well, not quite. Crimson Lake by Candace Fox. I actually have to review the sequel to this, but I had to read this one first. This is a thriller. The main character, Ted, has been accused of a crime he did not commit. He has been accused of kidnapping and raping a young preteen girl and cannot seem to prove his innocence, even though he was never found guilty of it. But he leaves, moves to an entirely other town, and becomes a private investigator just to do something with his life to give back and kind of ease the struggles he's been having, although he still fights it the entire time. I ended up loving this a lot more than I thought. I don't know why, but I kind of pushed it away for a little bit. I won this and the sequel in Bookish First, from Bookish First. So I'm like, well, I have to read it because I got the arc and all of that. But this surprised me with how much I liked it. The character is definitely pissed at the world because of what happened, but it also kind of makes a lot of sense. And after a while, you're like, no, you should be angry. This sucks. And I love when authors can do that, can make really angry characters that don't just annoy me, but like I get angry with them. So I definitely would suggest that. I will be reading and reviewing the sequel to this, hopefully in June. I don't know. My June is getting so busy. This is supposed to be my summer break. Not really. I got a summer job. All right, next up, was one of my favorite ones. The Guns of Empire by Django Wexler. This one tricked me. I thought this was the last in the series. It's not. It's the fourth, and the fifth one is the last one. In my defense, the author himself, when I talked about the third book, said that, oh, there's one more. But there's not one more, there's two more. So I was annoyed. So I probably would have loved this a lot more going into it if I hadn't been reading the last 100 pages. Like, how are they going to wrap all this up? There's so much plot left. But this is Flintlock fantasy, aka fantasy in the time of Flintlock military strategy, Napoleonic War, American Civil War, etc. This follows a couple different people as they're all struggling to, well, fight in a war. It's really hard to explain because so much of this book is dependent on so much of the first three books in the series. So if you haven't read those, I could spoil all of them just by trying to explain this. But suffice to say, I will be finishing out this series. I want to finish it out this year, and then I will at some point be having a video discussion because there's a character in here that has pretty blatant benevolent sexism, but it's handled the best I've ever seen it handled in a book. And so I want to do a discussion on that and how to write benevolent sexism believably and how to develop a character from it based on the character in this book. So if you're interested in that, be on the lookout. Next up, I read, my memoir, As You Wish by Cary Elwes. This is exactly what it looks like, minus the clearance sticker. This is Cary Elwes' memoir on the making of The Princess Bride. He got other of the actors to kind of chime in, so you can see like these little gray squares where other actors were like, well, my view on this one instance was this. It was so adorable. It was cute. He talked about how much everyone basically just loved working on it. Cary had read the book originally, so had a lot of the other members of the cast, and so this was basically a movie made out of love, and it comes through, and they loved working with each other. They genuinely made each other laugh, and like, it was just, it's the most heartwarming read. If you loved the movie, or even just liked the movie, you'll want to pick this up because, like, it makes the entire experience better. Like, they just loved making it so much, and it comes through so well, and that's why it's a classic. And yes, it is a classic. And those 11% of people that voted on that one Twitter poll that said it was overhyped, screw you. Anyway, next up, yes, my other book that I read to be reviewed, In the Night of Memory by Linda Lagarde Grover. This was about two Native American girls who are taken from their mother and put into the foster care system. Their mother disappears shortly after. They spend most of their childhood going from place to place until members of their tribe who knew their mother, and I believe are distant relatives, take them in. So it is essentially them coming back to their tribe. I believe the reservation is fictional, but I believe they're supposed to be Ojibwa. And I was really intrigued in the premise. Unfortunately, the formatting of the book kind of got to me because the synopsis a little bit lies to you in that, like, the focus isn't solely on the girls, Azure, Rain, and, was Azure Sky and Rain Dawn? Am I forgetting? Oof, I've read too many books this month. But it's Editing Margaret here. The characters' names are Rainfall, Dawn, and Azure Sky. I'm not quite sure why my brain was getting so mixed up there. Azure and Rain come back, but they're also... I said in the vlog that it kind of felt like I was sitting with a giant family full of people who were all trying to explain how they're all related to each other, but I couldn't quite figure it out. And that's really how it came across to me. Which was a little bit of a struggle because you spent, okay, they're cousins and you spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. But when it finally like settles down and settles into it, it was really bittersweet at times. I will say that it's very short for what it covers because it's only about a little over, 200 pages, like 210 pages. But like it starts from when the girls are like 3 and 4 to in their mid-30s. So, like, a lot of times it's just, oh yeah, and then we were here for 7 years and on to the next thing. That kind of took me out of it. We're like, no, I wanted more focus on the moments and less on the overall timeline. But it was very cute. There were some moments that genuinely had my heart aching because it was sad. So I would definitely check this out, especially if you're interested in Native American culture. I know the author is at least an honorary member of the Ojibwe tribe and has a degree in American Indian Studies. I have to do some more looking to find out if she has legitimate biological heritage. But it was cute. It just wasn't exactly what was promised, so I'm a little bit bummed. Up next, another good one. This was a pretty good reading month, actually. I didn't really have any super duds. Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. This was for both the Bookemon Badge-a-thon and the read-along. This was my satire. This is What If the End of the World But Funny? A demon and an angel decide that they like Earth and they don't really want it to end. So when Armageddon is called upon, they're like, I'm not really here for it. And they try to stop it. It is very, very British in humor, very dry and sarcastic, and I love that. The hellhound that the Antichrist is well, he's not really sticking him at anyone, but the hellhound is called Dog, and it's awesome. It's very funny. It made me like laugh out loud. I think I sped through this in 2 days because it was so much fun. If you are interested in the blackout poetry I made on the basis of a couple pages in here, I will have that video linked down below. That was a ton of fun to make. I'm really glad that was a challenge. My team lost because I picked angels, and whenever you pit angels and demons against each other, more people want to be demons. I wonder what that says about us. But anyway, really funny, very sacrilegious. So like if you're really into faith and don't want to read about like some of that stuff being kind of hem and hawed, and maybe not, but if you're into sacrilegion, pick it up. Oof, this video is going on a while, so let me work faster, she says as she turns pages slowly. Next up was New America by Ronald Cromartin and Dina Marim. This was probably my least favorite read because I was expecting a lot more out of it. This is about a young Israeli woman who wants to retire and go to America, but the men that trapped her as a child surface back up, so she has to fight them. The problem is, and maybe this is just me not reading comics, it was very short. I think I counted like 19 pages, and there was ads in it, and the story didn't tell you anything more than the synopsis. Like everything you learned in the synopsis, you relearn in the story in the first. This is the first issue. Maybe that's just me not liking comics, but it Save the Cat. I wasn't the biggest fan. Also, this if I pay for a book, I don't also want to see. I mean, it wasn't bad. Maybe that's just. I was kind of lied to about it though. When I've heard people talk about this, they talk about this book as being like the last book on writing you'll ever need and all that kind of stuff. It's really not. This was published in 2005, and it is about screenwriting. Now, there are a good handful of chapters in this book that are fantastic for general story writing. The problem is that that's really all that's helpful for if you're into writing novels, because it gets very much into how to pitch your novel to people in Hollywood, and it's just very much, this is how to do the screenwriting thing, not how, this is how to do the writing thing. And while there are some things that are universal, there are also some things that just don't translate. Like they talk about here, like your script should never be longer than 110 pages. And I cannot imagine anyone walking around being like, your book should only be 110 pages. They also talk about how, oh yeah, when you can't, don't precast and da-da-da-da-da. It's also very much caught in the time, because it was published in 2005. It talks about Blockbuster like it's a modern entity, unironically. And then there's one part where they talk about how, like, oh, if you're going to query, you have to query by letter. If you send an email, it'll just be lost in someone's inbox. And that is literally the exact opposite of how modern publishing works. Most publishing agencies won't take letters. They flat out tell you, like, hey, if you mail it to us, we'll shred it. Like, don't send us mail, send us an email. So it definitely needs to be updated, and I'm probably going to keep looking for writing books that are specifically about novels. I believe Stephen King wrote a book about writing, and if anyone gets to claim they're any kind of expert, it is Stephen King. So this one, it's still useful in a lot of ways. It's still helpful in a lot of ways, but don't go into this expecting, like, the be-all, end-all, like I did. And I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have taken the reviews with a grain of salt, and that is on me. Next up was 67 Salamanders by Geoffrey Joseph. This was my pick for my diversity badge. Both the author and the main character are Black. The synopsis was really, really vague on what happens, but essentially this young man gets an invitation to go to a very prestigious university that his father once worked at, and finds out some secrets about it and some secrets about himself. It's not quite as sci-fi as it looks, which is probably what disappointed me, because I was expecting a lot of sci-fi from the cover. I also, and it's safe to say, I don't do a lot of new adult. It was funny a lot of moments. The characters the characters shined through very well. But in general, it's not quite what I was hoping it would be. So I probably won't be continuing with this series. It's not like bad enough to make my worst of indie books list by any means. But just wasn't quite as exciting or as sci-fi as I had been hoping for. And this comes to the part where I had gotten to 14 books in the month. And I had read 14 books for Bookemon. And then I just decided I'm done. So I decided to pick up 2 other random books because I really wanted to get to 16. So I picked up Vampire Most Wanted by Lindsey Sands. I have the physical copy here somewhere, but apparently I suck at keeping track of my books this month. This was about a young-looking woman who is actually a vampire, named Basha, and how she's running away from her family and has been for thousands of years. And another vampire is sent by her family to track her down. Of course, they fall in love. Did you see the cover? But the fear is, what has her family done to make her so afraid? Or is she the rogue that her family is afraid she is? It had a great setup. I was genuinely reading it because I wanted to read it because I was really excited. But the ending kind of lost it for me. And I don't want to give it away too much, but I don't like endings that are where the big conflict is solved with a conversation. Like, I want there to be some kind of big tense moment. I don't want it to be like, oh yeah, I already knew that and it's fine. I hate that. It happens a lot in romance books, but the whole like, oh my gosh, this big reveal, it's going to be this big deal, and she's so nervous for the secret to come out, and then be like, oh no, the secret already came out and it's fine, everyone's okay with it. Like, no, I want the reveal, I want the shock. But it was pretty good up until that point. This is like number 20 in a series of books all about this vampire family. I don't know if I'll pick up the rest. If I stumble across them in a used bookstore like I stumbled across that one, I probably will. It all depends. But the last book I read this month was probably the biggest surprise, and that was Ella the Slayer by A.W. Exley. This, again, is what it looks like. This is a retelling of Cinderella as a zombie slayer. But what I loved the most about this was it wasn't just kind of that, oh, we're in a generic kind of old-timey place. It very much took place in the early 20th century, right after the end of the Great War. And it talks about the Great War, and it talks about, the soldiers that were in the Great War are coming home to fight zombies. And Eleanor, our Cinderella, is very much, it talks about, her father took an injury to the brain and is now comatose as a result of it. So he's not dead, but she has to take care of him along with the evil stepmother. And there's a stable hand that came back with shell shock. So like, there's a lot of emphasis on the place and the time that I really loved, that a lot of Cinderella retellings don't have. It's kind of, oh, it's generic this place. But it's very much a no, we are talking about England post World War I, and everything that entails. And she talks about changing fashions and how, you know, her stepsister still want to wear the Victorian fashion, but she steps up to the ball in some 1920s-esque fashion. And I loved that part. It also plays a lot with the tale. Like, you feel like, oh, I know what's coming next because this is a Cinderella story. And it'd be like, countdown to midnight. I know it's coming. And then swerve. It goes in an entirely other direction. It was delightful. And it is a series. So the way it looks to me is every different book is a focus on a different character who will then be a stand-in for a fairy tale character. At least it's generally what I'm thinking. There's a maid named Alice, and the next book is Alice the Player, I think. So it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland, but zombies. I was not expecting too much out of this. I thought, oh, it'll be a nice, light, easy read. I didn't expect it to be as much historical fiction as it was, and I appreciated that. So I will definitely be continuing with that series. I believe it is called the Serenity House series. But that was definitely my biggest surprise, where I went in not expecting a lot and was like, well, I mean, e-reader, so swiping through going, wait, where's it? I loved it. So that was my reading month, and I had so much fun. We'll probably not be reading 16 books again in a month for a while. While I am entering into summer break, I also got a summer job, and I might actually end up working more hours a week than my regular job, because that's just how it works. So I'm still going to set a goal for myself. I'm still going to try to read as much. However, this next month is all going to be about reviews and reviewing books, and be on the lookout, because some of those should be coming soon. And I'm hoping to get more of those out, because I just had a really popular video all about how I'm an indie book reviewer, and I need to live up to that now. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave me a like, a comment, subscribe, all of that good jazz, and I will talk to you next time.